Welcome to the Child Care Director's Chair, the podcast for bold educators who are ready to lead, grow, and shake things up in early childhood education. Whether you are a teacher eyeing that lead role, a lead stepping into leadership, or a center owner dreaming big, this is your space to grow with purpose and leave your mark. Hosted by heart-centered leadership coach Erica Sacosio, each episode brings you real talk, actionable tools, and a contagious laugh or two, all designed to help you step into your next level with confidence. So pour your coffee, pop in those earbuds, and take your seat, because your leadership journey starts right now in the Child Care Director's Chair.
Hey guys, it is your girl Erica here, and you are tuned in to the Child Care Director's Chair podcast, where all good things happen. And we love our ECE folks. So I have a question for you. Do you ever feel like your day in early childhood education is constant juggling act? I know you do. But what if I told you there's a way to find peace, clarity, and confidence? Not by working harder, by working smarter with mentorship. And today we're talking with Kerry Drake, who helps educators do exactly that with her peace framework philosophy. Whether you're leading a center, you are teaching in a classroom, or you're building a team, this episode will show you how mentorship, yes, even in the world's top performers, they rely on mentors too, can help you thrive. By the end, you'll know how to bring more balance, focus, and confidence into your day. So let me welcome our guest to the show. Kerry Drake is an educator, a mentor, and a coach who created the Peace framework built on expectations, accountability, communication, and evaluations to help early childhood professionals regain clarity and confidence. She has guided countless teachers and leaders to transform an overwhelm into structured, peaceful action while all finding their peace. It sounds delightful. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks so much, Erica. I'm so happy to be here.
So, Kerry, can you share a little bit of your journey in early childhood education and what inspired you to design your Peace framework?
Absolutely. So I've been in the field for over 18 years now. So started frontline, worked infant, toddler, preschool, school age, before and after school programs. In Ontario, we have full day kindergarten programs, so worked in those as well. And as I was going on this journey, often I was faced with the role of mentorship. And we would have students who would be completing their placements or practicums, coming in and joining us. New staff would be coming into the centers, and mentorship was just this tool that was being used to support all of this, all of the new students coming, the future of the field, the future of our centers. And what I noticed as I was engaging in this is there was a little bit of a gap. And the gap that I was noticing was training the mentors. And often one of the mistakes that I was seeing was that years of experience in the field were often being misconstrued with mentorship skills and abilities. And just because we have a lot of experience doesn't mean that everybody is meant to be a mentor.
For sure.
And so saw a big gap that was occurring there. And then I started teaching post-secondary. So I've been working in college and universities for the past 12 years. So seeing it from another lens, right? Working with the students and the mentors out in the field. And then in the last 3 years, I've had my Peace Mentorship framework through the company that I started and been able to really connect with the field, the experienced educators, the new educators, and everybody in between to give them the tools that they need and the voice that they need to really make mentorship effective.
Yeah, thank you. You know, and I feel like your framework is something that I wish had been around, and I can see why you developed it, because it's something I wish had been around when I first started in the field, right? And I think that we're recognizing that now over the last few years. And here in Rhode Island, we use something called the whole leadership framework. And it, very similar, like looking at all of we joke about how we juggle all these things, but we don't really get to what those things are. And so breaking them down into little pieces and what are the skills that we actually do need in this role. It's very interesting dichotomy because like, there are some careers where you only have to know how to do one thing, right? And be really good
Right.
at it. And we need to know how to do all these things on top of teaching, right? So yeah, mentorship is really important. And I feel like too, sometimes we have mentors not only within our four walls, but out in our larger community. I can just think as I was coming up, the number of mentors that I have had. I reconnected with one the other day. And, I'm like, I just want to tell you the impact that you really have had on my life in the last 20 years. What challenges have shaped your leadership and teaching styles? And maybe how did mentorship guide you through it, right? Because sometimes we're the mentor, sometimes we're the mentee.
I think a big piece for me is this idea of when we're looking at mentorship, it was almost treated as if it was extra.
Mm,
It was treated as if it was just something that we needed to do. And people spun it as it helps with retention and it helps with workforce stability. But when it's intentional, it does. Right. And we have a lot of unstructured mentorship that's happening. And this was kind of the loop I was finding myself in was this unstructured mentorship where compensation wasn't happening.
mhm,
And compensation doesn't have to be money. It could be time,
mhm,
or it could be a combination. But to be an effective mentor and to be an effective mentee, there needs to be time and there needs to be dedicated time because if you don't have time to dialogue, you don't have time for mentorship in our field specifically, right? It's a lot of hands-on, it's a lot of in the moment. And I was seeing a lot of, there's just this unstructured where informal mentorship almost became an expectation
mhm.
that people would just take this on. And so for me, one of the areas that I struggled with was we have this expectation in our field. We have this expectation within our roles, but it is one of the few parts of our roles that we are never trained on. It is
Yeah.
one of the few parts of our roles that it is just an extra expectation because it's not, if we look at the culture of our centers and the culture of our schools, most of that is shaped through conversation. It's not policy.
Mhm.
Policy is there, policy exists, but the actual culture is shaped through conversation, and mentorship can help structure how those conversations can look.
Yeah. Um, Talk a little bit about why mentorship is critical for educators at every stage, not just beginners.
So, beginners, it's huge, right? They have all this theory that they're getting, they've learned theoretically how to do everything, and then practically applying it is always a different story. So when we look at mentorship for new educators, it's really giving them that safety net to try the new things, knowing that there's somebody else who can help out and somebody else who can be there. But once they graduate and once they're in the field and they're working at their centers or at their schools, it's really important that we look at it from an onboarding standpoint and utilizing our mentorship tools and strategies like the PEACE framework as a way to really set clear expectations and guidelines, making sure accountability is there, also helping people to develop their mentor philosophy. We know as educators, we often have an educator philosophy, but a mentorship philosophy is different than that. And so making sure that we're looking at it that way. But mentorship is also not this hierarchy of top to bottom, but it's
Yeah.
also lateral, right? So if you have somebody who's been in a preschool room for 20 years and somebody who's been in the toddler room for 15, there's going to be mentorship that happens there when one of them switches rooms and switches spaces. So we also need to look at that lateral mentorship that can take place in between, making sure that we're looking at that we're not just in the habits and routines of old mentors who've maybe passed some things on to us. So having mentorship in the middle stage to really question our whys now that we're starting to get into some habits and some patterns in the field and having somebody intentionally guide a conversation and question us on those. And then also looking at it from, if we're looking at it as a retention piece, really structured mentorship allows for leadership succession. And so often what we see happen is the best educators are often moved into leadership positions, and the best educators aren't always the best leaders,
Mhm.
right? Just because they're really great in a classroom, really strong in a
You
classroom,
talking my language, girl.
they might not make that transition well if we
Yeah.
don't have these structures, right? If we're not utilizing it as directors and as supervisors and as business owners to really have a plan in place for what this could look like long term.
I want to add, you said so many great things, so thank you so much. I want to add maybe even another layer. I work a lot with the folks that are, I want to say the middle, I mean, for lack of better words, but where they're mentoring other folks, but they're also in need of mentorship for their own growth because we can get very stagnant. We work a lot alone, right? We give so much to other people that we sometimes lose focus on what's the next thing for us. And I look at mentorship, I look at it almost like not just for retention, but for growth, like real actual growth. And so I think that you need to look at it in two ways. Mentorship for your people, absolutely. But who's mentoring you and how are you getting, that next level, that next push? Because again, we can get real comfortable in the status quo. I beg people who are listening, if you listen to my channel, you already know that you're not getting to stay stagnant here. But yeah, I want you to really be reflective and think about like, it's great to mentor your people. And then also that lateral, I love that lateral that you talked about. And I think that also helps build morale in your school. There's so much good richness that comes out of that for sure. But, if you're a director or you're an owner and you don't have a mentor, you really should. Because you're only going to, we have that cap. You have that cap, and your team only can go as high as your cap, there, that lid, as John Maxwell says, right? So you've got to raise your lid so everybody around you can raise theirs. So.
And it's so true because everybody needs mentors. And you're probably in your lifetime going to have anywhere from 5 to 7 formal mentors.
Sure.
And then, like you said, John Maxwell, you're going to have, if you haven't met or gone through the programs, you have these informal mentors that you're still learning from, but everybody should have one. Top CEOs have mentors
Sure
to
do.
help them with their companies, right? It's just smart.
Yeah. Can you share a story of a mentor who made a big difference in your career?
I absolutely can. And it was Nancy. And I just like you, every few years, I'm like, gosh, they really did. They really did play a role, and something will happen and something will pop up. And one of the things that I loved when I was working with Nancy at the time, so she was my mentor when I was a student, and then we ended up working together. So that lateral mentorship piece was definitely a part of our relationship. And one of the things that I took away from that relationship, and it's really influenced the framework that I developed along with the research that I've done, was it was very clear that my role as a mentee was just as important as their role as a mentor.
Yeah.
So I had to be active and I had to be accountable for my role in my learning. And Nancy matched it, right? Your mentor should never be putting in more effort than you are in order for you to get where you're going.
Yeah.
So when I elevated my role as a mentee, Nancy elevated her role as a mentor, and she kind of kept pulling me up, and we kind of did this back and forth. But it was always, here's my why. Most of our conversations that we had, she would ask me, like, what did you think I was doing in this moment? What did you think my intent was in this moment? And then we had opportunity to have conversation and dialogue about it and unpack. And she's like, actually, I was thinking this. And this is why I do it this way. But here's also another way to do it. And one of the things I loved was that Nancy didn't make it my way or the highway. It was, here is my way to approach it. Here's what I think about it. There is other ways to do it. And I've seen it done other ways. It doesn't feel natural for me. It feels more natural for other people.
Yeah.
And it was more about helping me to uncover what methodology works best for me, what pedagogy works best for me. Even if there was moments where it wasn't in alignment with hers, it was still a conversation. So Nancy definitely made a really big impact as a mentor for me, for sure.
You brought something really interesting there. And good job, Nancy. But I want to say too, you have to really be authentic, be yourself, and that's when you're going to really, evolve to your highest potential, is when you stay true to yourself. So it is great to have a mentor for sure. But like you said, like take the pieces that can really help you, that make sense, that you connect with and resonate with, but don't lose yourself in it, right? So I think that that's really, really important. So how do the world's top leaders leverage mentorship for growth?
Geez. Well,
We have the hard-hitting questions here on the podcast today.
I love it, Erica. They use it as strategy, right? Mentorship is strategy. And when it's structured, unstructured mentorship just kind of becomes informal venting. It becomes emotional support for people. But like you said earlier, formal mentorship or structured mentorship is that professional growth. So when we look at the way that the best leaders use it, it is intentional, it is strategic, and it's not just delegating. It's not just, oh, I'm just going to make my job easier and pass things off to somebody else, but it's they utilize the strengths of their mentee.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we do in the PEACE framework is looking at our day one with our mentee and utilizing that strength-based perspective. So what are your strengths, and having your mentee identify them, and as a leader, having the emotional intelligence to understand if this is what your strengths are, then we're going to feed into those strengths, and I'm going to support your areas of growth as we're going alongside that, because it just helps to build the confidence along with the skill at the same time.
Yeah. I think too, what happens is, I think when people hear the word I'm the mentee and and this one is the mentor, it is a very reciprocal relationship, which is literally my favorite word in the dictionary. But it's very reciprocal because you learn
Uh-huh.
from each other and you give to each other, almost going back to like one shouldn't be working harder than the other. And I think, going back to like how top leaders really leverage that mentorship, like you said, strategic. And I can give a perfect example. I'm just going to give a quick plug, and I promise
Yeah.
we're gonna move on to that framework. But here's a perfect example. So I met Noelle Dentino, who runs a directors club. And we met at a conference about 2 years ago, and we were talking at that conference, and she had been doing podcasting way longer than me. She had been doing coaching way longer than me. I had really just started at that point, and she shared so much with me. It was like she was so transparent. She's like, "Do this, do that, and this is how I do this." She would just it was just so genuine. And we came together, and I was like, "Well, I have always these big ideas. I'm a big personality. For those of you who don't know me, and this is your first episode, I was like, I want to do this and I want to do that. And she's like, she's a little more behind the scenes. She's very organized. She's all the things I'm not. And the two of us came together and ran one of the largest conferences our state had ever seen. And now we're in year two, and like we have a national conference in year two. Like it's crazy, but it really
Yeah.
came from just that mentorship of she showed me how to do particular things, and I said, all right, let's, do that. And I brought my things to the table. And I think that that is how top leaders really leverage the skill set of those around them. And I always think
Mhm.
they always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong
Leave
room
the room.
and you got to move rooms. And so, that's kind of what mentorship does for you on a regular level. It really does help you see from a different perspective. It helps you push yourself past boundaries that you might not normally do. And it helps you clarify your thoughts and builds confidence for sure. All right. We're going to get into now this second segment here. We're going to get into Kerry Peace framework. So can you break down for us and explain your expectations, accountability, communication, evaluation? Can you talk to us about these pillars?
Absolutely. First of all, your story that you just shared, it's because we're not gatekeeping,
Yeah.
right? We don't need to gatekeep. There's enough room at every table if we want to be there. And
Mhm.
so having a mentor who's like, let's do this,
Yeah.
and it doesn't diminish you, right?
Mhm.
Helping somebody else doesn't take away from you. So I
Amen.
love that you had that experience. But when we're looking at our framework, so the PEACE framework, so it starts out with your philosophy, goes into expectations, accountability, communication, and evaluation. So those are the 5 pillars that we're looking at with this. And when we look at our philosophy, there's different ways for mentors to approach a mentor-mentee relationship. Us really like to be the teacher, and we're like, let me just give you all the information and let me just dump all of this stuff on you. Some of us are like, let me see what you do first, and then I'm going to approach you. Some of us like to sit back and wait and watch. And so figuring out what is kind of your archetype when it comes to being a mentor in a relationship and understanding your skills and abilities. Because one of the things that we do talk about when we work through this mentorship framework is you might not be a good match. You might not be a good partner for the mentee.
Mm-hmm.
Mentee may not be a good partner for you. And both of those things are okay. And when we set the stage up front and we set the stage early, it allows us to not waste time, right? It is time consuming for us to take on this role in this relationship on both ends because there should be a commitment level to it. So figuring out your philosophy, figuring out your approach, what you value as a mentor, what are your core values? What are things that you are going to hold true to in this relationship? One of the things, like you said earlier, being authentic is a big piece of it. And some people struggle with their authenticity in mentorship. They almost have imposter syndrome of who am I to be the one giving all of these lessons? And so navigating that is kind of our first stage that we look at. Then we head into our expectations, and this is dual-sided. So I love that you mentioned reciprocal relationship because both people need to be active in this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at what are the expectations that you have as a mentor of your mentee, and also asking your mentee, what are your expectations of me? What are you hoping to get from this relationship? And again, just setting that up from the beginning removes the opportunity for misunderstanding, allows us to reference back to something of, hey,
Mm-hmm.
when we started, this is what we had said, and really just eliminates the ambiguity of what the
Mm-hmm.
relationship is going to look like. A lot of mentors struggle with knowing, am I doing too much, too little? You've got to have those conversations, and they're not easy conversations, but tough conversations is where growth can happen. And so making sure that you're looking at those. The accountability piece is dual-sided as well, right? So everything that we're looking at, once you have your philosophy, is looking at both sides of this relationship. So looking at our accountability, I had somebody who went through the program, and one of the things that they struggled with was they had a student who wasn't successful. And they were like, I failed the student. I failed the student. And I was like, or did the student fail? Because those are two different things. Did you do all the things that you said you were going to do? Did you provide the supports that you had agreed to at the beginning? Then you didn't fail them, right? You showed up, you met your expectations, you met their expectations. If they were unsuccessful, then we also need to look at the accountability on the mentee side. Did they show up the way that they said they were going to? Did they meet the expectations that were equally set at the beginning? And so understanding that you're going to have checkpoints throughout the relationship. So however long this mentee-mentor relationship is, knowing that you're going to have some checkpoints for the accountability pieces, right? To make sure everybody is still doing what they agreed to at the beginning, making sure everybody, we can elevate our expectations now that we know each other a little bit better, the growth continues for both of us. Communication is the C. So then we walk through different ways to have our communication style. So how to have the tough conversations, how to have those accountability conversations as we're going through. Also making sure that you're communicating in a way that works both sides, right? Some people just send me an email, I'd love to read through it. Some people are like, we need to sit down and have a conversation. Knowing communication styles and communication expectations and having, just with the accountability, set communication checkpoints is really important. And then we also give you, if you go through the PEACE framework, a structure for how those meetings go. So first we're going to talk about A, then we're going to talk about B, then we're going to talk about C. And we're going to make sure that throughout this conversation, the mentee has an opportunity to share, the mentor has an opportunity to share what's working well together, where are we finding ourselves drifting apart. Is that something we need to focus on, or is it something we can just move past? Maybe we've outgrown that expectation and we don't need to harp on it any longer. So really working through those conversations. With the tough conversations, we talk about the power of perception, right? And realizing that not everything is centered around you, even though things are happening around you.
It's not? What do you mean?
It's not. I'm sorry
It's not
to
always
tell
about me.
you. It's not. That's the difference between perception and perspective,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our perception is it's all about us, but perspective shows us that It's really not.
Yeah.
So how to navigate that. And then we go into evaluation, and again, dual-sided. So how are we evaluating our mentee, and are we taking evaluation and feedback back from them? Because we need to continue to grow as mentors. They need to continue to grow as mentees. Those mentees will become mentors. Us as mentors become mentees again.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding the full circle of that relationship and all of the nuances that often are the things that cause us the stress.
Tell me a little bit about how this framework really creates some peace and clarity to people's work.
So when I was doing the research on this and when I was connecting with communities, one of the things that I did was I did a little tea talk with everybody. And I said, hey, let's just want to know, what are the things that you're struggling? What are the things that cause you the most stress around mentorship? And so we gathered some qualitative data that way. And then we started looking at different mentorship frameworks globally and what was taking place, and different leadership frameworks that were taking place. And there was a lot of consistency around what are the areas that cause us stress in these relationships? What are the areas that cause us stress in this dynamic, whether it's lateral, hierarchy, whatever it is. And these are the 5 things that people really struggled with: is they just aren't meeting my expectations. I want them to do this. They're not doing it. I'm expecting this of them. I tried to tell them this, but they didn't get it. And so when we look at this framework, each of these different 5 pillars has structure that goes with them, worksheets or templates that go with them, to help make sure that we're setting ourselves up for those moments that really cause us stress. Because the part of mentorship that's easy is when we're in the doing, right? The doing is easy because we have stuff that we want to share. If you want to be a mentor, you want to help somebody in their journey. You want to be a part of those conversations with them. You want to have somebody reach out to you 20 years later and say, hey, you actually really made a difference. Like, we want to have that impact. And so this allows us to remove the biggest barriers that we face as mentors, the biggest pain points that mentors see in their relationship, and allows us to really just set that tone. We have like a day 1 intake form that we work through, really setting that tone from the beginning. 1, are we a good fit? If we're a good fit, this is how we're moving forward, and this is how we're moving forward together. And once that is established and that groundwork is there, it's just giving that foundation that we need to do the fun stuff.
Okay. Well, let me ask. Actually, before I hop into the next question, I do want to say, as we're talking about peace and clarity, I want to highlight something that's all about making your life easier and more professional. At the Early Childhood Empowerment Conference, educators can stop by East Coast Capture in the Sky Lounge, capturing school photos in a safe, secure, and stress-free way. And it's also such a great way to feel polished, put together, and confident as you step into your leadership role. Kind of like the peace and clarity we're talking about in your framework.
I think if we are looking at early childhood education or educators in general, and we want them to be respected as a profession, we have to develop our professionals intentionally. And mentorship is how leadership multiplies itself. So when we have these mentorship roles, we are developing our leadership skills. And when we develop our leadership skills, we are developing our confidence in and out of our classrooms. One of the things that we look at is, if we look at how strong centers are built, and the data showed in 2023, 30% of educators were leaving the field. Like, the turnover was just, we were looking at it. And so if we look at this as an investment in our organizations, we see that we're not just developing the new people coming in, but by us teaching new mentees or lateral mentees our whys and our skills and our abilities, we are renewing them in ourselves. We are remembering our whys. We are feeling that passion again about, no, this is why I do it. Like, I've seen it work. When little Johnny came in, this is the strategy for little Johnny. And when we start passing those things on to our mentees, it sparks something in us again to remind us of what works, because a mentee will question us, as they should. And when they question us, it allows us to develop those skills or start to eliminate some things that you're like, you know what? I don't remember why I do this anymore. I really don't. Somebody said it to me 20 years ago. Someone told me sharing is caring, and now I'm telling everybody that it is. And all the research says it's not, but maybe I've just got passed these things on to me. And so having that relationship allows the mentors to really build their skills, and building their skills is building their confidence.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, Kerry, if you could leave every educator with one actionable takeaway about mentorship and finding peace, what would it be?
It's not a bonus. It's not a bonus, right? Mentorship isn't a bonus. Mentorship isn't extra. It is intentional. And if you are not in the journey right now to be one, it's okay to say no. And if you are in a space where you're curious about it, learning how to have the tools to set you up for success is really important, because we don't want burnout. We don't want the mentors who've been doing it year after year feeling unsupported. And so making sure that you are looking at building the skills that you need, building the community that you need. So like you said, you have that leadership group, right? Nothing should be done in silo. Everything should be done in community. And so finding the people who can help you navigate this is really, really important, because it can feel like an island if you don't have the support that you need.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. You've been an incredible guest. For those of you who are looking to find peace and connect with incredible leaders, we invite you to join us at the Early Childhood Empowerment Conference. The link is below. And also, if you want to connect with Kerry, her link will be below in the show notes as well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, guys, and have a great day.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Child Care Director's Chair, where we believe leaders aren't born, they're grown. If something sparked for you today, share it, shout it out, or pass it along to the next bold changemaker in childcare. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected with Erica Sacoccio for more real talk leadership tools and a whole lot of inspiration. Until next time, lead with heart, grow with fire, and always remember, the chair is yours. Now own it.